I, 17F, need to start from the beginning to help everyone understand how I ended up in this situation. My mom had me when she was 16 years old. She was a sophomore in high school and got pregnant after hooking up with a senior at a party. My biological father wasn't interested in being a dad, at least that's the story I was always told. My grandparents, mom's parents, were prominent figures in our community. They owned a large investment firm that had been in the family for 3 generations, lived in a mansion in the most expensive part of town, and were involved in all the elite social circles. My mom's teen pregnancy was a massive scandal that rocked their social standing. Most of their friends suggested sending my mom away to a special home for unwed mothers, or having her stay with distant relatives until the baby was born and could be given up for adoption. But my grandparents surprised everyone by standing by my mom and helping her raise me. They let us both live in their mansion, hired nannies and tutors so my mom could finish high school, and provided everything we needed. But my mom never wanted to be a mother. From my earliest memories, she treated me like I was a burden, a living reminder of her biggest mistake. She blamed me for ruining her youth, her reputation, and her social life. Growing up, we lived in the same huge house, but she barely acknowledged my existence unless we were in public. My grandparents were the ones who actually raised me. They took me to school, helped with homework, attended my performances and sports events, celebrated my birthdays. My mom was physically present but emotionally absent. I remember when I was around 6, I made her a Mother's Day card in school like all the other kids. When I gave it to her, she just looked at it and said she was busy with work. I found it in the trash later that day. After that, I started making Mother's Day cards for my grandmother instead. My mom never even noticed. She focused all her energy on rebuilding her image after having me. She graduated high school with honors, went to an Ivy League college paid for by my grandparents, and then got an entry-level job at my grandfather's investment firm. She worked her way up through the ranks, eventually becoming the chief operating officer by the time she was 30. Everyone in our social circle praised her for being such a strong single mom who had overcome teen pregnancy to become successful. Articles were written about her in business magazines, highlighting her as an example of female empowerment and resilience. But behind closed doors, she treated me like I didn't exist. If we were at the same dinner table, she would talk to everyone else but ignore me completely. She never came to any of my school events or activities unless my grandparents specifically insisted she needed to be there for appearances. Even then, she would spend the whole time on her phone or talking to other parents, acting like I was someone else's child she had no connection to. I learned early on to stay out of her way. I kept quiet, got good grades, participated in all the right extracurricular activities, and tried not to need anything from her. My grandparents provided everything. They paid for my private school tuition, my clothes, my activities, my summer camps. My mom lived in the family mansion with us but spent most of her time either working or socializing with her wealthy friends. She'd sometimes bring boyfriends home, but none of the relationships lasted long. I later overheard her telling a friend that men were put off by the idea of dating someone with a teenage daughter. Things changed dramatically 6 months ago when she met Richard, 45M, at a charity gala. He's the CEO of a successful tech company and comes from old money like my grandparents. They had a whirlwind romance. Suddenly he was always at our house, and my mom was happier than I'd ever seen her. They got engaged after just 3 months of dating. I thought maybe things would finally get better, that having a stable relationship would make my mom softer towards me. I was wrong. A week after the engagement, my mom called me into her home office. She told me I needed to move out before the wedding. She said Richard was her chance at having the perfect life and family she always wanted, and my presence would just remind everyone of her youthful mistake. She told me I had ruined her life once by being born and she wouldn't let me ruin it again. She said Richard knew about me, of course, but they had agreed it would be better if I wasn't around to complicate their fresh start. I was shocked but not entirely surprised by her attitude. What did surprise me was that she had waited until my grandparents were away on a month-long Mediterranean cruise to have this conversation. She told me I had 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. When I tried explaining that I was still in high school and had nowhere to go, she said I could figure it out just like she had to figure things out when she got pregnant with me. She conveniently forgot that she had my grandparents' support and never actually had to figure anything out on her own. She started moving my things to the guest house the very next day. She changed the codes to the main house and told the staff I was no longer allowed inside except to get any remaining belongings. She treated me like an unwanted houseguest who had overstayed their welcome. I spent a week in complete panic, trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't reach my grandparents since they were on a cruise ship with limited connectivity. None of my friends' parents would take me in long term, and I couldn't exactly explain the situation without causing a huge scandal. Finally, After a particularly bad night where my mom had security escort me out when I tried to get food from the main house kitchen, I broke down and called my grandfather's personal secretary. I knew she had emergency contact methods for my grandparents. I explained the situation and begged her to help me reach them. She managed to get through, and they immediately cut their cruise short to come home. When they got back, I told them everything, not just about being kicked out, but about all the years of emotional abuse and neglect. About how my mom had treated me like I didn't exist, about all the times she had made me feel unwanted and unloved, about how she only acknowledged me when we needed to maintain appearances in public. My grandparents were furious. I had never seen my grandfather so angry. He immediately called an emergency board meeting and suspended my mom from her position as COO pending an investigation into unethical conduct. Apparently there were already concerns about some of her recent business decisions, and this was the final straw that made him realize she wasn't fit for the position. My mom was livid when she found out about the suspension. She showed up at the mansion screaming that I was a manipulative liar who was trying to ruin her life again. She said I was jealous of her happiness with Richard and was trying to sabotage her relationship. My grandmother had security escort her out while she was still screaming about how ungrateful I was. Richard called off the engagement the next day when he found out about the suspension. Turns out he had been mainly interested in merging his company with my grandfather's firm through marriage. That was 3 weeks ago. My mom has been alternating between threatening me and trying to guilt-trip me. She's been blowing up my phone saying I've destroyed her life twice now, once by being born and again by telling my grandparents the truth. She says she'll never forgive me for ruining her chance at happiness. But for the first time in my life, I'm not letting her manipulate me anymore. I've blocked her number and all her social media accounts. My grandparents have promised I'll always have a home with them, and for the first time, I feel like someone is actually on my side. Update 1: It's been about 2 months since my original post, and I hardly recognize my life anymore. Everything has changed so dramatically that sometimes I have to remind myself this is all real. A lot has happened, and I need to share it all because the situation has gotten even more complicated than I could have imagined. The board's investigation into my mom revealed things that shocked even my grandfather. It turns out that she had been making increasingly risky financial decisions over the past few years. She had been approving investments in startups without proper due diligence, mainly focusing on companies owned by her friends or potential romantic interests. Several of these companies went bankrupt, causing significant losses for my grandfather's firm. But that wasn't even the worst part. Once the accountants started digging through the books, they found irregular payments and inconsistencies in the financial records. My mom had been falsifying reports to hide losses and make her department appear more successful than it was. She had also been approving unusually high consulting fees to shell companies that the investigators discovered were owned by her friends. When confronted with the evidence, my mom tried to blame everything on her assistant. She claimed she had trusted her assistant to handle the paperwork and had no idea about any irregularities. But the investigators found emails and documentation proving she was directly involved in everything. They even discovered that she had pressured junior employees to alter financial reports, threatening their jobs if they didn't comply. The board voted unanimously to terminate her employment. She lost everything that came with her position: her company car, her expense account, her corner office, and most importantly, her reputation in the business community. The news spread quickly through their social circles, and suddenly all those people who had praised her as a role model for working mothers were distancing themselves. What made everything worse for her was Richard's reaction. Not only did he break off the engagement, but he also went to the press with the story. He gave an exclusive interview to a major business magazine, painting himself as the innocent party who had been deceived by a dishonest executive. He claimed he had no idea about the financial irregularities when he got engaged to her, and he had ended the relationship as soon as he discovered the truth because integrity is a core value of his company. His company's stock actually went up after he publicly distanced himself from my mom and grandfather's firm. My mom seems to be spiraling. Last week, she showed up at the mansion at 2 a.m., clearly drunk. She started screaming at the security gates about how unfair everything was. She was yelling about how she had spent her entire life trying to overcome the shame of having a baby at 16, building her career and reputation from nothing, completely ignoring all the support and opportunities my grandparents had given her, and now I had ruined everything again. Security had to physically remove her from the property while she was still screaming about how I had destroyed her life twice. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. After news of my mom's firing made the local papers, some of her old high school classmates reached out to me through social media. They told me that the story I had always been told about my biological father wasn't entirely true. According to them, my father hadn't abandoned us at all. He had actually wanted to be involved in my life, but my mom and grandparents had paid him off to stay away because they thought he wasn't good enough for their family. He came from a working-class background, and they worried he would damage their social standing even more than the teen pregnancy had. One of these classmates, who had been close friends with my father in high school, even sent me old letters and emails. In them, my father had written about wanting to take responsibility and be part of my life, but being threatened with legal action if he tried to contact us. The last email was from when I was about 2 years old, where he finally accepted a large payment from my grandparents in exchange for signing away his parental rights and agreeing to never contact us. I showed these messages to my grandparents. My grandmother broke down crying and admitted it was true. She said they thought they were doing what was best for everyone at the time, and they had convinced themselves that a clean break would be better than having my father in and out of my life. My grandfather seemed ashamed and said they had been wrong to make that decision without considering what I might want to know when I was older. I'm still processing all of this information. Finding out that my father didn't abandon us willingly, that he actually wanted to be part of my life, has shaken everything I thought I knew about my family. My grandparents have offered to help me find him if I want to, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for that yet. I have enough to deal with right now with my mom's situation. The latest development is that my mom has started sending emails to everyone in their social circle trying to paint herself as the victim. She's claiming that I manipulated my grandparents into turning against her because I was jealous of her relationship with Richard. Some people have actually reached out to express sympathy for her, but most seem to see through it. They've all seen how she treated me over the years, even if no one ever said anything about it. I'm trying to focus on finishing my senior year and planning for college, but it's hard with all this drama going on. At least I know I have my grandparents' support now, and I'm finally starting to understand that none of this was ever my fault. My mom made her own choices, and now she's facing the consequences of them. Update 2. It's been 4 months since my last update, and the situation has gotten even more intense than before. After losing her job at my grandfather's firm, my mom's life went into a complete downward spiral. She tried applying to other investment firms, but word had spread about the financial irregularities at my grandfather's company. No one wanted to take a risk on hiring her, especially since she had been in such a high position when everything happened. She had to sell her luxury condo in the city because she couldn't afford the mortgage payments anymore. She moved to a small apartment in a less prestigious area, which I heard about through family friends who seemed to take pleasure in updating everyone about her fall from grace. She also had to sell her designer clothes and bags to cover her basic expenses. From what I heard, she even tried to start a financial consulting business, but no one would hire her once they Googled her name. I started my senior year of high school last month, and I thought things were finally calming down. But then my mom showed up at school during lunch period. She was wearing clothes I'd never seen her in before, nothing like her usual designer suits. She cornered me in the cafeteria and started begging me to tell my grandparents that I had lied about everything. She said if I just admitted that I made up the stories about her neglecting me, they would give her back her job and everything could go back to normal. When I refused, she started screaming about how I was an ungrateful brat who had ruined her life. She said she should have given me up for adoption when she had the chance. Other students started recording the scene on their phones, and it was completely humiliating. The school security had to physically remove her while she was still yelling about how I had destroyed everything she had worked for. The school called the police, and they've now issued a restraining order preventing her from coming near the campus. The videos of her meltdown spread through social media, which made everything even worse for her. Some local news websites picked up the story, connecting it to her firing from my grandfather's firm. This led to the biggest revelation yet. My grandfather's lawyers were going through old company records as part of the standard post-termination audit when they discovered something shocking. They found evidence that my mom had set up several secret accounts over the years and had been siphoning money from the company. She had created fake consultancy contracts and had been transferring small amounts regularly, not enough to raise immediate red flags, but it added up to a significant sum over time. The lawyers found that she had stolen nearly $300,000 over the past 5 years. She had been using the money to maintain her lavish lifestyle, expensive vacations, designer shopping sprees, fancy restaurants. All while telling everyone she was just good at managing her COO salary. My grandfather was devastated when he found out. He said it wasn't even about the money, the company could absorb the loss, but about how calculating and dishonest his daughter had become. What made it even worse was that they found emails showing she had planned to steal more aggressively once she married Richard. She had been setting up additional fake contracts that would have started after the wedding, apparently believing that her position would be more secure once she was married to another CEO. The lawyers think this might have been part of why she was so desperate to marry Richard quickly and get me out of the picture. She didn't want anyone looking too closely at her activities. My grandparents felt they had no choice but to press criminal charges. The evidence was too clear, and as a publicly traded company, they had obligations to their shareholders. The police came to arrest my mom at her apartment last week. She's been released on bail, but she's facing serious charges of embezzlement and fraud. She's been calling and texting nonstop from different numbers, begging me to speak to my grandparents on her behalf. She switches between crying about how she'll die if she goes to jail and threatening to tell everyone horrible lies about me if I don't help her. I've blocked every new number she uses, but she keeps finding ways to contact me. She even sent letters to my school addressed to my teachers, trying to get them to pass messages to me. My grandparents are trying to shield me from most of it, but it's hard. The whole situation has become local news, and people at school keep asking me about it. Some of my mom's old friends have been posting nasty things about me online, saying I'm an evil daughter for letting my mother be arrested. But they don't know the whole story, and I'm done feeling guilty for other people's actions. Update 3. It's been 6 months since everything started, and I finally feel like I can breathe again. The legal drama with my mom has mostly concluded. After months of her lawyers trying to fight the charges, she finally accepted a plea deal. The prosecutors agreed to no jail time in exchange for full restitution of the stolen money, 5 years of probation, and a permanent ban from working in the financial industry. My mom had to sell everything she owned to pay back the money she stole. Her designer wardrobe, her jewelry collection, her luxury car, everything went to auctions. She even had to cash out her retirement accounts. But even after selling everything, she still couldn't cover the full amount. My grandparents agreed to consider the remaining balance paid if she signed a legal agreement to never contact me again until I choose to reach out to her. She signed it immediately. I guess avoiding jail was more important to her than having any relationship with me. She's working as a retail manager at a department store now. Someone who used to work for her at my grandfather's firm saw her there and spread the word through social media. Everyone's talking about how far she's fallen, from COO of a major investment firm to folding clothes and dealing with customer complaints. I should feel bad about it, but honestly, I don't. She's still better off than she would have been in jail. Richard got engaged again last month to another executive from a different finance company. I saw the announcement in the business section of the local paper. He made sure to include a quote about how happy he was to find someone who shares his values of honesty and integrity, obviously another dig at my mom. She apparently saw it too because she tried to break her no-contact agreement and sent me a long email blaming me for ruining her chance at a perfect life with him. I'm graduating next month, and for the first time, I'm actually excited about my future. I got accepted to several good colleges, and my grandparents are paying for everything. They've set up a trust fund for me that my mom can't touch. Ironically, they use some of the money she had to pay back as restitution. They say it's what they should have done years ago instead of enabling my mom's behavior and letting her control the narrative about our family. The incident at school actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. After videos of my mom's meltdown went viral, several other students reached out to tell me about their own experiences with parental emotional abuse. We formed a sort of informal support group. It's nice to know I'm not alone, and helping others has helped me process my own experiences. My grandfather revealed something interesting last week. He's been in contact with my biological father through his lawyers. Apparently, my father has been following my mom's downfall in the news and reached out to make sure I was okay. He's married now with 3 kids, living in a different state. He said he'd like to meet me if I'm ever interested, but he understands if I'm not ready. My grandfather gave me his contact information to use whenever I feel prepared for that step. I've had no contact with my mom since she signed the agreement. Her friends still occasionally try to guilt-trip me on social media, saying I'm heartless for letting my mother lose everything. But I know the truth, she destroyed her own life through her choices and actions. She lost everything because she was greedy and dishonest, not because I finally stood up for myself. I'm just glad I finally stopped letting her make me feel guilty for simply existing. My grandparents have been amazing through all of this. They've apologized repeatedly for not seeing how my mom treated me all those years. We've grown closer than ever before. My grandmother has been helping me plan my dorm room for college, and my grandfather has been teaching me about managing my trust fund responsibly. They're the parents I should have had all along.